I am standing in front of the house where I grew up, keys in my hand. I am 27 years old now, and this Victorian two-story home on Maple Street is mine. Not because I inherited it, not because my parents gave it to me, but because I bought it. 9 years ago, on a cold November night in 2015, my father pointed at this same door and told me to get out. I was 18, holding a backpack with $53 in my pocket, and my only crime was refusing to become the person they wanted me to be. Tonight I am not here as their son coming home. I am here as the legal owner of the place they once threw me out of. Before I tell you how a kid with nothing but a backpack and $53 turned his biggest rejection into his greatest victory, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will show you that sometimes the people who doubt you the most end up needing you the most. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in what most people would call a comfortable middle-class family. My father, Richard, was a successful attorney at one of the larger law firms downtown. He wore expensive suits, drove a black sedan, and talked about cases over dinner like they were the most important things in the world. My mother, Patricia, taught high school English and had a reputation for being strict but fair. She loved literature, order, and having a plan for everything. My younger sister, Natalie, was 3 years behind me, and the golden child who never questioned anything our parents said. Our house was a beautiful Victorian on Maple Street, worth around $350,000 back in 2015. It had tall ceilings, hardwood floors that creaked in the right places, and a big front porch where my mother kept flower pots that bloomed every spring. From the outside, we looked perfect. From the inside, we were a family built on expectations. The plan for my life was laid out before I even understood what plans were. I would get good grades. I would go to a prestigious university, preferably Duke or Northwestern. I would study pre-law. Then I would go to law school. Then I would become an attorney like my father and eventually take over his practice. It was all mapped out, discussed at every family dinner, mentioned at every parent-teacher conference. The plan. Always the plan. When I was younger, I tried to fit into it. I got the grades. I joined the debate team. I did everything a future lawyer was supposed to do. But there was something inside me that never felt right about it. While my father talked about courtrooms and contracts, I was upstairs in my room sketching buildings. I loved the way lines came together to create spaces. I loved imagining how people would move through the structures I drew. Architecture and design were not just hobbies for me. They were the only things that made me feel alive. In my junior year of high school, I started spending more time in the art room. Mr. Harrison, my art teacher, noticed that I had something. He was the first adult who ever told me I could make a career out of creating beautiful things. He encouraged me to think about architecture school, to consider Rhode Island School of Design or Pratt Institute. For the first time, someone believed in a version of me that was not wearing a suit and standing in a courtroom. I tried to bring it up at home. It was subtle at first. I mentioned architecture during dinner one night, just testing the waters. My mother smiled and said, "Art is a hobby, not a career, sweetheart. You need stability." My father did not even look up from his plate. He just said I didn't work 30 years building my practice so my son could draw pictures for a living. I felt the door close before I even got a chance to open it, but the dream did not go away. It grew stronger. By my senior year, I knew I could not live the life they wanted for me, so I did something I had never done before. I applied to RISD and Pratt without telling them. At the same time, they had already submitted applications to Duke and Northwestern on my behalf. They were so confident I would follow the plan that they did not even think to ask me what I wanted. April of 2015 changed everything. I got my acceptance letters. RISD accepted me. Pratt accepted me. Duke accepted me too. My parents threw a small celebration dinner when the Duke letter arrived. They were so proud. They talked about visiting the campus, about how I would love North Carolina, about the connections I would make. I sat there silent, holding the RISD letter in my backpack upstairs. I knew I had to tell them. I knew it was going to hurt, but I also knew I could not lie anymore. One night after dinner, I asked them to sit down in the living room. Natalie was there too, sitting on the stairs watching. I took a deep breath and told them the truth. I told them I had applied to design schools. I told them I got in. I told them I wanted to study architecture, not law. At first, they thought I was joking. My mother laughed nervously. My father just stared at me. When they realized I was serious, the air in the room changed. My father's face went pale, then red. His voice got cold in a way I had never heard before. "You applied behind our backs." After everything we planned, my mother started crying. Not sad crying, angry crying. She felt betrayed. She said I was throwing away my future. She said I was being selfish and ungrateful. Natalie just sat there looking at me like I was a stranger. The argument lasted hours. They threw every reason at me. Architecture was not stable. The pay was terrible. I would struggle my whole life. They had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars raising me, and this was how I repaid them. By chasing some ridiculous dream, my father finally stood up, his voice shaking with anger, and gave me an ultimatum. "You go to Duke and study law, or you are on your own. We will not pay a dime for art school." I felt my world collapse. I had expected disappointment. I had expected them to be upset. But I never expected them to turn their love into a transaction. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely alone. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be rejected by the people who were supposed to love you no matter what. The months that followed were the hardest of my life. It was May of 2015, and I had just graduated high school. While my classmates were celebrating and making plans for college, I was living in a war zone. My parents stopped talking to me unless it was absolutely necessary. Dinner became silent and unbearable. My mother would not look at me. My father acted like I did not exist. Even Natalie avoided me siding with them because it was easier than standing up for me. My friends did not understand either. Most of them came from wealthy families where college was a given and parents paid for everything. When I tried to explain why I was choosing a design school over Duke, they looked at me like I was crazy. Only Marcus got it. He was my best friend since middle school, and his family did not have money. He understood what it meant to fight for something. He told me, "Dude, it is your life, not theirs. You have got to live it." But Marcus could not fix the loneliness I felt at home. I started working part-time at a coffee shop called Java Junction to save money. I made $10 an hour and worked 20 hours a week. It was not much, but it was something. I researched scholarships and student loans, trying to figure out how I could afford RISD without my parents. The tuition was around $48,000 a year. Even with scholarships, I would need to borrow around $30,000 annually. It was terrifying, but I was determined. In October of 2015, the deadline to confirm enrollment was approaching. I had to make a choice. Duke, where my parents would pay for everything and I would live a life I did not want, or RISD, where I would be buried in debt but finally live for myself. I sat in my room one night doing the math over and over. I knew the debt would follow me for years. I knew it would be hard. But I also knew that if I gave in now, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. I filled out the enrollment confirmation for RISD. I applied for student loans. And I did not tell my parents until it was done. A letter from RISD came to the house in mid-November. My father found it first. That night, everything exploded. It was raining outside, the kind of heavy Portland rain that makes you feel like the world is ending. My father came into the living room holding the letter, his face red with rage. "You defied us." After everything we said, my mother was crying again, saying I had destroyed the family's dreams. Natalie stood at the top of the stairs, watching in silence. I tried to stay calm. I tried to explain that this was my life, my choice. But my father was not listening. He was shouting now louder than I had ever heard him. "If you walk out that door to chase this ridiculous dream, you are no longer my son." I felt something break inside me. I looked at him and said, my voice shaking, "Then I guess I am not your son anymore." For a moment, nobody moved. Then my father pointed at the door. "Get out. Get out of my house right now." I went upstairs, my hands trembling. I grabbed my backpack and stuffed it with clothes, my laptop, a few of my drawings. I emptied my wallet. $53. That was all I had. I walked back downstairs. My mother was sitting on the couch, her face in her hands. Natalie was still on the stairs, her eyes wide but silent. My father stood by the door, waiting. I walked past him into the rain. The door slammed shut behind me. I stood there on the porch for a moment, soaking wet, feeling the weight of everything I had just lost. Then I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. Marcus and his family lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. When I showed up at their door that night, dripping wet and barely holding it together, his mom did not ask questions. She just gave me a towel and pointed to the couch. I slept there that night and for many nights after. The first few weeks were brutal. I felt like I was drowning. I picked up full-time hours at Java Junction, working 40 hours a week just to survive. I was exhausted all the time. At night, lying on Marcus's couch, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I thought about my family. I thought about the warm house on Maple Street. I thought about my mother's cooking and my father's terrible jokes and even Natalie's annoying habits, and I felt the ache of being unwanted. December of 2015 was the worst. It was Christmas, and I saw on social media that my family was celebrating without me. Natalie posted pictures of the Christmas tree of the dinner table of everyone smiling. I was not in a single photo. It was like I had been erased. That night, alone in Marcus's apartment while his family was visiting relatives, I cried for the first time since leaving home. I cried because I felt abandoned. I cried because I was scared.